All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling one of the absolute biggest mysteries in all of fantasy lore. We all know the story, of course, but when you really stop and think about it, how could a seemingly immortal, godlike being like Sauron be permanently destroyed by a simple piece of jewelry? It sounds kind of absurd when you phrase it like that, right? Okay, let's dive right into this, because the answer is actually incredibly profound. You see, understanding Tolkien's underlying magic system solves virtually every single mystery of The Lord of the Rings. This isn't just a story about swords and monsters. It's a story about the deep, almost scientific metaphysics of Middle-earth. Once you understand the rules of this universe, everything from Sauron's immense power to his ultimate downfall makes perfect, logical sense. So, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Anatomy of the Ring. 2. The Mount Doom Rule. 3. The Tom Bombadil Exception. 4. Why the gods stepped back. And 5. Sauron's ultimate fate. Let's get right to it.
Starting off with Section 1, Anatomy of the Ring, or as I like to call it, the external hard drive.
To truly figure out how the ring's destruction could end a being as powerful as Sauron, we first have to understand its metaphysical construction. What exactly is the One Ring? If you're picturing a magical trinket that just turns you invisible and makes you a bit grumpy, you've got to shift your perspective entirely. The ring is not just a tool, it's a piece of a literal soul. To really grasp this, we have to look at the Elvish word fia. Basically, this translates to spirit or soul. Now, in Tolkien's universe, a spirit doesn't actually have to stay locked inside a biological body. It can exist all on its own, or, and this is the absolutely crucial part, it can be deliberately bound to a physical medium. Sauron took a massive amount of his own fare, his own inherent angelic power, and poured it straight into the gold of the ring. He effectively built an external hard drive for his spirit. He took that immense power that was completely native to him, and he locked it inside an inanimate object. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why he would do something so incredibly risky. Just look at this breakdown. You've got the 3 rings for the elves, the 7 for the dwarves, the 9 for men, and the 1 for Sauron. That one ring acted like a master remote control. Its entire purpose was to tap into the minds of anyone wearing the lesser rings and completely dominate them. But to build a master control with that much dominating force, Sauron had to gamble, big time. He had to risk his own native power by externalizing it in a really profound way. Moving on to Section 2, the Mount Doom Rule, the Law of Similarity. So if Sauron's soul is just sitting right there in a little gold band, you might be wondering, why couldn't it just be smashed by a heavy hammer or melted by a dragon? Well, let's look at this definitive quote from Gandalf. He says, "Nor was there ever any dragon, not even Ankel-Agon the Black, who could have harmed the One Ring, for it was made by Sauron himself." I absolutely love this quote. Ankel-Agon the Black was a dragon so terrifyingly massive that when he fell, he literally crushed mountain ranges. But even his legendary fire couldn't melt the ring. Why? Because its durability was directly tied to the spiritual stature of Amaya, Sauron himself. Conventional extreme heat was completely useless against a spiritual barrier of that magnitude. This actually introduces us to what we can call the Law of Similarity. In Tolkien's magic system, a magical bond can only be unmade by the specific environment and tools that were used to weave it in the first place. Think of it like a giant magical lock and key. The fires of Mount Doom aren't special just because they're hot. They are special because they are the precise magical key required to unlock Sauron's spells. Sauron used the subterranean fires of that exact volcano to weave his sorcery into the gold. Therefore, logically, only that exact forge fire could unravel it.
Now let's contrast these two scenarios really quickly so you can see why the ring is Sauron's ultimate Achilles heel. On side A, look at what happens when you destroy Sauron's physical body. Fun fact, this actually happened multiple times in the lore. But every time his body died, he eventually regenerated because the ring still existed to anchor his power to Middle-earth. But then look at side B. Destroy the ring, and Sauron's native power is permanently dissolved. By externalizing his power to try and conquer the world, he basically handed his enemies a single catastrophic vulnerability.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Tom Bombadil Exception, a carefree pacifist.
Now this brings up a massive debate among fans. If the ring is this ultimate soul-crushing tool of domination, why in the world did it completely fail to affect the mysterious Tom Bombadil? Well, what's really interesting here is the core mechanic of how the ring actually works. The ring isn't just emitting evil radiation, it's a psychological parasite. It absolutely requires a desire for power and ambition to take root. But Tom Bombadil? The guy only desired a fun, simple life with his wife. Because Tom had absolutely zero desire to rule, control, or dominate others, the ring literally had nothing to latch onto. Against him, it was entirely powerless.
We can really see this when we rapidly list out Tom's key characteristics. First off, Tom acts as a caretaker of his land, not a king. Second, his innate abilities are deeply tied to and amplified in his home, the Old Forest. Third, he possesses absolute Estelle, which is this deep, unwavering faith in the Creator Aru's grand plan. And finally, he's completely detached from the politics of war. You put all these unique traits together, and they allowed Tom to hold the ultimate weapon of pure, unadulterated evil and treat it like a cheap parlor trick. I mean, he puts it on, doesn't even turn invisible, and just hands it right back. No big deal.
All right, Section 4. Why the gods stepped back. The Valor's restraint.
So, seeing how incredibly dangerous this ring was, you have to ask, why didn't the godlike Valar or the great smith Aule just come down from the heavens and unmake it themselves? Well, the answer lies in the Valar's strict, almost parental approach. The free peoples of Middle-earth had to learn to resist tyranny and solve their own problems without constantly relying on divine intervention. And why is that? Because historically, it went terribly. Back in the First Age, when the Valar used direct divine force to defeat the first Dark Lord Morgoth, the collateral damage was so unimaginably massive that it literally sank an entire continent. Beleriand was wiped completely off the map. So, Middle-earth had to bear the consequences of forging the rings and clean up its own mess.
So instead of bringing down an army of angels to fix things, the divine powers employed highly passive, covert strategies to orchestrate the ring's downfall. They sent the 5 wizards, the Istari, guys like Gandalf, to guide and inspire the free peoples, but strictly forbade them from matching Sauron's power with sheer force. They flat out refused to shelter the ring in the west. And even the supreme creator, Eru Ilúvatar, worked through subtle nudges. For instance, Eru resurrected Gandalf after he died fighting the Balrog. And amazingly, Tolkien actually confirmed in his letters that it was Eru who provided the final ultimate intervention. The Supreme Creator subtly tripped Gollum at the cracks of doom to ensure the ring finally fell. The gods didn't send an army, they sent a nudge.
And that leads us to our final section. Section 5, Sauron's Ultimate Fate, a Spirit of Malice. This brings us right to the absolute climax of our explainer. We know the ring goes into the fire, but what exactly happened to the Dark Lord the precise second that gold dissolved? Well, the answer is 0. That is the exact amount of power Sauron had left. Remember, he poured the vast majority of his inherent spiritual energy into that ring, so without it, his accessible power level dropped to absolute 0. The moment the gold melted, that invested energy wasn't magically returned to him. It was completely unmade and dispersed. His spirit was instantly starved of the energy required to ever interact with the physical world, or take a physical form ever again.
So the crucial point here is summarized perfectly in this incredibly chilling quote from Tolkien's notes. Upon the ring's destruction, Sauron fell, becoming, quote, a mere spirit of malice that gnaws itself in the shadows but cannot again grow or take shape. He didn't just die, he was permanently reduced to a pathetic, impotent shadow. Just a memory of malicious will that can only hate, but can never, ever rebuild.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Tolkien noted that Sauron essentially became a powerless shadow. But if his spirit still exists out there, if it still roams the world, whispering malice and greed and the desire for domination into the hearts of humanity, have we truly defeated the new shadow yet? The ring itself might be melted, but the legacy of its corruption really leaves us pondering the true, enduring nature of evil in our own world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will catch you in the next one.